learn different coping skills. I had leaned on alcohol as a crutch for 10 years. I think many, especially high performing men, it's like they go and they give their all at their work all day. And then they get home and they're just like, ugh, and using alcohol to kind of numb, just like, using it as a crutch essentially. But to be able to, trust yourself in a way to have other coping skills, to feel like you don't need to drink and you don't want to drink, that freedom is just incredible. So it transforms lives, and it's not about counting sober days or, again, labeling yourself an alcoholic. It's just fixing the brain, and that is true freedom.
Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, the place where high-performing men are empowered to reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness while enhancing their career success. You see, in a world full of noise, burnout, and mediocrity, we believe what's missing is courageous and compassionate leadership in the home, because when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. You see, this isn't just a podcast. It's a movement of men who refuse to settle for less in our families, our focus, and our future. We are curse breakers and we are legacy makers. And I'm your host, Mitchell Osman, and I'm honored that you have chosen to invest your most valuable asset, which is your time, with me today. Now let's get into it. Well, welcome to the Dad Nation podcast. I am excited to talk to Katie today. And so listen, a little bit about Katie. She is the founder of Thrive Alcohol Recovery and a leading voice for science-based approach to drinking less without having to go sober. Wow, I'm looking forward to getting into that. After nearly a decade of drinking 1 to 2 bottles of wine a night, while still appearing to function at a high level, she discovered the Sinclair Method, which is a neuroscience-backed treatment that uses the medication something, she's going to explain that word, to retrain the brain's response to alcohol. Katie used this method to regain control, and today she is alcohol-free, not because she had to quit, but because she no longer wanted to drink. I think that's an important distinction. I love that. Now she helps high performers, many of them fathers, leaders, and professionals, quiet the cravings, keep their edge, and break the habit without shame, rehab, or even having to quit if they don't want to. It's not about willpower. It's about working with your brain to reverse the addiction privately and discreetly from home. Wow, I love that. Thank you, Katie, for being on the show today. Really looking forward to having this conversation. We've not talked much about alcohol on the show yet, but it's a real thing. So thank you for being here today with us.
Yeah, honored to be here. I've been shouting this treatment from the rooftop since 2017, so it's something I'm really passionate about. I've worked with a lot of men who overcame alcohol dependence through this treatment, so I hope this information is helpful, even if just to one person.
Yeah. I mean, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your journey real quickly, like 5 minutes or less. But I know your bio said that you drank 1 to 2 bottles of wine a night, but really, like, what made you go from having this problem with drinking to now all of a sudden wanting to help people? Because that's a big shift. You know what I mean? Very
unexpected for me, to be honest, because I went to school for business. I did not anticipate working in the recovery field, but I struggled with my drinking for 10 years, and really, for most of that time, I would say for probably 8 of those 10 years, I was earnestly trying to either moderate or quit drinking, because I kind of fell into alcohol dependence pretty quickly. Like at the age of 20, 21, just started binge drinking and turned into daily drinking, and it happened really quickly. And so I recognized the problem just a couple of years in my early 20s. And I would try to moderate, try to set rules, save it for the weekend, limit it to 2 glasses, all these like 1,000,001 kind of mindful drinking techniques a lot of people try to use. And they were largely ineffective for me, to be honest. I might successfully moderate to 2 glasses of wine, but it would be very white-knuckled. I would be annoyed that I couldn't drink more. I would want to drink more. So the frustration with moderation kind of led me to believe, well, maybe I'm not a normal drinker. Maybe I'm an alcoholic. Maybe I have to quit drinking. And so I tried to quit drinking probably dozens of times over the course of that period. I just get so fed up with a hangover or doing something I said or regretted. And so I would commit to quitting. I would make it a day or two. I made it 6 months one time. I would try for 30-day challenges like people do, dry January and things like that. I was successful some of the time, but again, it would be this just overwhelming desire to drink that never went away. Even when I was 6 months sober, I wanted to drink every day. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm going to drink again one day. It's just a matter of kind of how long I can go, this kind of stint of sobriety, if you will. And I will just say, like, I really wanted to get this issue under control. It wasn't because I didn't want it. And that's something that kind of frustrates me in the treatment world, where they're like, oh, you got to really want it. I'm like, I wanted it. But the issue, which we'll talk about, was, now I know, something that happened in my brain, which was just driving this compulsion to keep drinking that really overrode my logic and reason. So constantly looking for alternatives. I'm trying all these different treatments. And modalities, kind of personal development, maybe if I have an enlightenment or self-realization, like it'll hit me, I'll have an epiphany. Even had a couple rock bottom moments where I literally almost died from my drinking and I still didn't quit. So I kept looking for answers, and one hungover Sunday came across this treatment in a random YouTube video. It's actually a TEDx talk where a woman talks about it. And it seemed too good to be true when I heard about it, because it goes against everything we've believed about alcohol dependence, or alcohol use disorders, the clinical term. It sounded too good to be true, because it wasn't abstinence based. It wasn't willpower, white knuckle. It wasn't calling yourself an alcoholic. It's a way to fix your brain so you can become less interested in alcohol and get your control back. And so knew I had to try it. It took me a few months to figure out how to get started on the treatment, because it's been around for 30 years, but a lot of people don't know about it, unfortunately. But finally started on it in July of 2017. And within a week, I could tell something was different. Like I was a daily drinker. I had an alcohol-free day that week that was not white-knuckled. I wasn't thinking about drinking as much. I was just like, something is changing. Like I feel like something in my brain, I could just tell something was changing. Now it was gradual over the course of a year, but over the course of 8 months to a year, I went from daily binge drinking and weekends of binge drinking starting at 11 a.m. to being someone who had a glass or two of wine once or twice a month, like going out to dinner with my husband. Incredibly life-changing. And again, it wasn't me trying to force moderation with that glass or two of wine. It was me that was all I wanted. I didn't want to drink the rest of the time. So when this treatment started to change my life, I started talking about it on YouTube just to be like, hello, this is something that's out there and it works. And that just kind of organically led me into helping people with it and working in the recovery world now full time since 2018, 2019, helping people with this treatment. Wow.
I love that. It's so funny. You started off by saying, I did a business degree. I didn't expect to get into the recovery industry. And that is so much the case of almost every single person that I've ever had on the show, myself included. You're like, you just kind of fell into this, it was a struggle, or, I often make a joke. One of the couples that I had on the podcast earlier on when I started was, they're marriage counselors and fantastic. They've helped millions of people. And it started off because she punched him in the face and gave him a black eye. It's like, man, we can truly turn our trash into something beautiful. And that sounds like your story. So I appreciate, number one, I'm proud of you. It's amazing. And I love the fact that you've been able to turn this around and turn this into something great. If you don't mind, I'd love to ask you a few different questions about sort of the approach and how, guys can sort of self-diagnose and all that stuff. Is that okay?
Of course. Yeah. I'm an open book. I've worked with a lot of men over the years, so happy to help any way I can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of people, not just men, but a lot of people in general use alcohol as a way to like relax. That we use it to celebrate. We use it to cope with stress. Alcohol is a part of a lot of parts of our lives, every major celebration, and especially for guys in high pressure careers, which are a lot of my listeners, in leadership, VPs, CEOs, you name it. So when do you think that shifts from normal use to addiction? And if there's somebody that is listening that's not quite sure where they sit on that pendulum, how can a guy know that he's crossed a line, or is there a line? You know what I mean? How can he self-diagnose? Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And honestly, like the clinical term, and people kind of get mad at me for using this term because they're like, it's alcoholism or they're an alcoholic. But the term that's used in the medical community now is alcohol use disorder because it's a spectrum. It's mild, moderate to severe. And so I think if somebody is even just starting to question whether their relationship with alcohol is healthy, is probably a sign that they are somewhere on the spectrum. And I think as a society, we kind of view issues with alcohol in a very black and white lens. Like you're either the alcoholic under the bridge drinking out of a brown paper bag, or you're not, because most people know AA, that treatment requires you to call yourself an alcoholic. You can never touch alcohol again. It's believed that you have this allergy to alcohol. And, that treatment's been around for almost 100 years and it's helped a lot of people. My dad is sober through AA, so I never bash it, but it hasn't quite caught up with the neuroscientific understanding of what alcohol use disorder actually is and the fact that it's actually something that can be reversed or unlearned. So, again, I think just a simple, if someone wants to self-diagnose, if they're starting to question, man, am I drinking too much? Or is my drinking causing harm in my life and I'm continuing to use it? For example, are you hungover? Are you not following through with commitments? It's really interesting because in my work, I'm lucky to work with people from the start of their treatment journey throughout. And commonly, and I hear this from men a lot, they'll say, yeah, I'm drinking too much. I can see that, but it's not really impacting my work or my home life or things like that. And I think they genuinely believe that because when we're drinking a lot over a long period of time, our baseline for wellness and performance just kind of lowers. Alcohol use disorder is progressive. And so oftentimes they'll say that when we start working together, and then a few months into treatment, when they're getting a different perspective and they're drinking less, they're like, okay, I see how it was, impacting my confidence, or I wasn't speaking up in meetings, or, I'm at home with my family, I'm physically there, but my mind is elsewhere. I'm thinking about that beer I'm going to open later after the kids go to bed, for example, or 6-pack of beers or whatever. And so it's something that is progressive. And I think that sometimes people can stay stuck in what a lot of people know the term gray area drinking, because we have this belief that we're either an alcoholic who needs to go to AA or rehab and can never touch alcohol again, or we don't have a problem. And where I want to kind of invite people to, consider or question their relationship with alcohol, it is to understand that it's not that black and white. It's a spectrum. And the good news is you don't have to call yourself an alcoholic. It's helpful to understand the neuroscience of alcohol dependence, which we can talk about, understanding that it can happen to almost anybody with enough repeated use of alcohol. And let's be real, alcohol is everywhere. It's socially acceptable everywhere. It's at 5K runs and grocery stores and movie theaters. And so if someone feels like they're drinking too much, they don't have to identify with the label of alcoholic and, check themselves into rehab. There are treatments that exist that help someone to simply drink less, helping to fix the brain, helping the brain to unlearn it. And so it's not like this. I just remember feeling like I don't want to label myself an alcoholic. That's such a burden to bear, and that identity. And so for people to know that just because you're drinking too much, it's kind of like when we gain too much weight if we're eating junk food. It's like, yeah, I've been eating too much. Okay, I better get back to the gym and kind of fix my habits a bit. It's not a big deal or lifelong illness when you're recognizing that you might be having an issue. But kind of just to finish that off, you asked, is there a point when it becomes obvious? And for a lot of people, there's not this obvious point of okay, that was the point in time where it developed into, from normal drinking to alcohol dependence. Because it's so subtle and progressive, people will often tell me, well, it started as 2 glasses of wine after work to unwind, and then it was 3, and then it was a bottle, and now I'm cracking open that second bottle or that third bottle. And so we're not quite sure exactly when it crosses over, but I think some signs of that are, mental preoccupation, just thinking about drinking more, looking forward to it more, having consequences that are a result of your drinking, again, whether it's a hangover or confidence issues or, emotional issues, snapping at your family or your kids, feeling like you need alcohol to cope with stress and things like that. I hope that answers your question a bit.
Yeah, yeah, and I love this idea of the fact that addiction is on a spectrum. I was listening to Mark Manson's podcast a little while ago, and he was talking a little bit about that, and he, I mean, they took this concept and applied it to lots of different areas of our lives, and basically posed the question: could we consider that perhaps you're either not an addict or you're not, that you're somewhere on the spectrum?
Yes.
And he related it to social media usage, to porn, to drugs, to alcohol. And then I thought, that is the first time I had heard that. And I thought, well, that's brilliant. Because I think, I think it's important to understand that, because I think I would agree with you that it's tough to identify with being an addict, because the second you say that word, all of a sudden there's images that pop up. There's connotations to that word. You're like, well, wait a minute. I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? I'm a successful entrepreneur. I'm a leader in my industry. I'm not like a troll under a bridge drinking from a brown bag, so I love that concept. It's actually quite liberating, Yeah. And I've actually considered that. So for myself, I think for me in my personal life, my business is run on my phone, right? And it can get so easy to blur the lines of like, well, am I on my phone now because I'm working on my business, or am I on my phone now because I'm just, you're laughing because you've probably been there, right?
I don't drink, but I'm out on TikTok.
Right, exactly. And so I'm like, am I an addict, or like, where am I? Am I a 4 out of 10? Am I a 9? And so I think that's really, honestly, if that's all people learned, that this is a perspective, or that this is a spectrum, then I think that's valuable. Okay, I want to ask you a quick question about men, and basically how, alcohol affects their ability to show up. I talk to a lot of guys about leading your home, stepping up, becoming the man, being fully present, leading your children, having a clear mind, all that stuff. But in your experience with working with men, how does alcohol use affect a man's ability to lead his home well, especially in the terms of like, their presence, their patience, like intimacy in their marriage? Like, what are some ways that this affects men?
I mean, everything that you listed, like showing up as a leader, that needs confidence and clarity and feeling well rested. And I think one of the biggest areas, and maybe we're not even aware of it when we're in the thick of it and we're drinking a lot, alcohol just like robs our confidence, because we feel out of integrity with ourselves oftentimes, because it's not a logical issue. Like, that's part of understanding the neuroscience of addiction. Many of us who drink too much, we wake up the next morning, we're like, why did I do that? I drank too much. I said this to my wife. I was snappy with my kids. Or even more severe cases, like the wife leaves. Why am I drinking? I'm destroying my family. I love them. That's the logical part of the brain that is the real you that wants this issue under control. But the disorder is in a more powerful, primitive part of the brain. And it's almost as if that part of the brain gets hijacked by the addiction. And so it overrides all logic and reason. And so logically, we can wake up and be like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not drinking. It's destroying my family or my business or my health or whatever. And they sincerely mean it. But underneath that, the addiction, and something we can talk about, is, there's a phenomenon known as the alcohol deprivation effect that has been researched for decades that shows that just by going abstinent from alcohol, your brain is still addicted. And so the longer someone is alcohol free, they actually desire it more. They crave it more. And so that's why people can be super motivated to quit or cut back. And then within a day, a few days, few weeks, few months, they're justifying it again because the desire for it keeps on increasing. So I think it really impacts, and again, they're not totally aware of it because their baseline for normalcy is lower, but it can impact every area of their life at home. Like I think I gave the example earlier of the gentleman I worked with. I think his story is actually on my YouTube channel. But he talked about how he would be physically present at home, but mentally checked out. He'd be like drinking his beer, looking forward to when the kids go to bed so he can have his bottle or two of wine to himself, as kind of like alone time. And especially if they're high performers and in like a stressful job, I mean, a lot of us, this was true for me. I was just like looking forward to that evening drinking ritual to kind of turn off and numb out. And again, the brain is what's driving all of that. It's craving it. And so, I see as people, and again, this isn't about abstinence. This isn't about you can never drink again. I see people who cut back their drinking even early on in the treatment, 20 to 30%, they're drinking that much less. And they're like, wow, I'm sleeping so much better. I'm so much more patient with my kids. My mind is clear. I'm more confident. I'm actually present now. I'm paying attention. When we drink so much, it can impact everything in our brain, our impulse control. We're not as patient. We're not as emotionally regulated. So we can be on highs and lows really easily. So it really touches every area of our lives. And again, like working with people is maybe not something we always see when we're in the thick of it, but it's something we get greater perspective on. And again, it's not about you're an alcoholic and you can never touch alcohol again. It's like if you're questioning your drinking, there's ways that you can cut back. And even just by cutting back, you can start to reap those benefits of it. And that alone is super motivating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Hey, brother, does this sound familiar to you? Maybe you're powerful at work, you're respected, you're competent, you're driven. But when you walk through the door at home, you feel like a stranger. Maybe your marriage feels distant. Maybe your temper's shorter, your body's softer. And you've been stuck in this loop where you're showing up for everyone except for the people that matter the most. I know that pain because I lived it. And that's why I created the Dad Nation Coalition, which is a 1-year high-level coaching community for career-driven men who are done settling for success in only one area of their life. This isn't just about getting more productive or working harder. This is about reclaiming your role as a present, powerful, and peaceful leader in your home, in your marriage, and in your body. Inside the coalition, we don't just talk about growth, we build it. You will create a life that your wife wants to be a part of. You'll become a father your kids look up to. You'll wake up proud of the man staring back at you in the mirror. And here's the best part, you won't do it alone. You'll be surrounded by a brotherhood of men who will challenge your excuses, sharpen your edge, and celebrate your wins like family. In the DNC, you're going to get 12 months of bi-weekly coaching calls with me and the other members of the coalition. You're going to get a customized fitness and nutrition plan designed for your specific goals, and exclusive access to my flagship trilogy called The High Performance Husband. You're going to get a one-to-one mastermind with me where we build your blueprint for success in every area. And lastly, an invitation to our exclusive annual mastermind and retreat. Brother, this is the framework that I use with my private clients, and it's led to real marriages saved, real bodies transformed, and real men rising up as the leaders they were meant to be. So if you're ready to rebuild your body, reignite your marriage, and rise up as a high-performance man of purpose, then apply today. Go to dadnationco.com/DNC or hit the link in the show notes below. Brother, let's make these next 12 months be the ones that changed everything for you. All right, now let's get back into it. I've one of my first clients was an alcoholic, and so walking that road with him was tough, but to see the transformation in his life was absolutely incredible. In his fitness, in his marriage, and how he thought, his confidence, all that stuff. There might be a man listening who's been stuck in cycles of this, maybe drinking too much, and maybe he's gotten himself down or whatever. But what do you think, just in your experience with working with men, just so maybe you can give them some hope, what does sobriety or even a reduction in alcohol, not even just going totally sober, how does that change a man's brain and his body and his mindset? Like, what are like real practical examples of things you see when people get sober and reduce how much they drink? And perhaps, could you share a transformation story with me of someone that you've worked with?
Yeah, I think this is true for men and women and all humans across the board. Like, I don't know, I really believe that we all have a purpose to fulfill in life. And when we drink a lot, it becomes a real substitute for meaning. I read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a classic. Have you read it?
Oh, yeah, like twice. And
Yeah.
I quote it often. Brilliant book.
Yeah. His body of work was just brilliant. But he says something along the lines of, and I might butcher it, but it's like essentially when our lives lack meaning, we distract ourselves with pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so true with alcohol use disorder. And just to quote Andrew Huberman, too, he says an addiction is the gradual narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. And I love that definition of it because we're talking about it being progressive. And so as you're learning an addiction to something, alcohol, for example, it's a gradual narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. So a lot of people start drinking and they love to bike. They love to, hang out with the guys or spend time with their wife or their kids or their work. They've got this menu of things that they love to do. And the more we overuse alcohol, it starts to kind of take on a life of its own. We put it on a pedestal and it becomes the primary thing we're looking to for pleasure. And so you could even be on a vacation with your family in the most beautiful resort ever, and it's just incredible. You're off of work. And when you're addicted to alcohol, your brain's thinking, this is great, but where's the bar? And that's really, again, the neuroscience of addiction and what's happening in the brain when it's essentially the addiction hijacks the brain and it changes the pleasure centers. And so all of the other pleasures in life kind of pale in comparison to the pleasure we get from alcohol. Mm. And so, with the Sinclair Method treatment, can I talk a little bit about how that works? Because it's related to this.
Oh, 100%. Give her. I'd love to learn more.
Okay, cool. So when we learn addiction, first of all, it's this concept of this being a learned behavior. And this was a cornerstone. By the way, it's called the Sinclair Method, named after the doctor who discovered it back in the 90s, Dr. David Sinclair. So he kind of showed in his research that alcohol addiction or alcohol use disorder is a learned behavior that happens over time through repetition. Even if you're born with like a genetic predisposition, if you never touch alcohol, you're not going to get addicted. Almost anybody can get addicted to alcohol by repeatedly drinking, and especially if you drink to excess. And the reason that happens is because it's flooding your brain with a ton of pleasure. That's why we drink. That's why the first time we drink, maybe we don't like it because the taste isn't great. But as you drink and expose yourself to it, you're getting a huge rush of pleasure in your brain. And your brain loves pleasure. Your brain actually equates pleasure to survival. And so when you're constantly flooding your brain with all of this artificial pleasure, that's way more than you get from even like sex or other pleasures, it changes your brain, and your brain starts to equate the pleasure from alcohol to almost like a survival need in a way. And so when that happens, that's when people are craving alcohol a lot. Like if you go a day without food, all you're doing is thinking about food. Or if you're really thirsty, you're thinking about water all the time. Same thing is true with alcohol. It's in the same region of the brain where when you're addicted, you're just craving it a lot, or you're thinking about it a lot. Or once you have your first drink, you've got to keep drinking until you black out or get super drunk. And so this is the learned behavior of alcohol dependence that can happen to almost anyone. And once that's set in, it becomes very hard to quit drinking because the brain has changed. It's hardwired in a different way. And that's why, I get emails from gentlemen, 6 months, 2 years sober. They're like, I haven't drank in 2 years, but I still want to drink every day. Mm-hmm. And to me, I've been there. That's not real freedom when you're just like fighting the urge that feels so natural to want to drink. And so with the Sinclair Method treatment protocol, it really works to reverse those brain changes over time. And it works by taking a medicine called Naltrexone. It's a generic medicine. It's non-addictive. It's quite benign. It's been around for since the 80s, I think. It's been approved for alcohol since the 90s. And it's very cheap because it's generic. And so this medicine is taken before drinking. So someone keeps drinking like normal and they start taking the medicine before. And what's happening is the naltrexone is working in the brain to blunt the rewarding effects of alcohol. You can still get drunk. You can still enjoy drinking. I enjoy drinking more on the medicine because I saw myself having control over alcohol again. I would have 2 glasses of wine and put the cork back in the bottle and not feel the need to keep drinking. My cravings were starting to go away. I wasn't thinking about alcohol as much. And so with this treatment, what happens is someone has learned an alcohol use disorder, and through this protocol, it can gradually be unlearned because the brain gets fixed the addiction actually gets fully reversed in the brain, and the brain is restored back to the place it was in before somebody ever had issues with alcohol. So, before we ever have our first drink, we're not thinking about alcohol after a bad day, or, we're not binge drinking. It's just a non-issue because the brain hasn't learned that behavior. Yeah. And so when that happens for people, the potential becomes endless, and it's like kind of cliche, but it's like so true. You can do anything at that point because your mind is free. You're not obsessing on alcohol anymore. You have the option to drink if you want to. But for a lot of people, they start to rediscover other pleasures in life, other coping skills in life. A lot of men pick up exercise again, or they take it way more seriously, or take it to the next level, or men quit their job and go to another job or get a promotion. Just all these areas where they've kind of been surviving in life, or just kind of showing up 50%, they start to show up more fully. They're showing up 100%. They're feeling healthy. They're feeling confident. So many benefits can come. And again, it's not about white-knuckling it and not drinking and calling yourself an alcoholic. It's like you said in the intro, like working with your brain to understand that it's learned this disorder and it can actually be unlearned. And the results of this treatment are just incredible. I mean, I've worked in this field since 2018. There's tons of research behind it. It's got a clinically proven about 80% success rate, but it's wildly unknown still. And I have understanding and some reasons as to probably why that is. But I think most people understand neuroplasticity and that the brain can change. We used to believe that the brain was stuck, but it's not stuck anymore. And even if you have a severe case of alcohol addiction, it can actually be reversed over time through this treatment. And one final thing I'll say is, most people recognize it's not just about taking a pill, because like in my case, I was drinking every day for 10 years. So it was like an ingrained habit and ritual. It touched every area of my life. So the medication gave me the mental capacity to think about other things. I wasn't fighting a craving every day, so I could explore other hobbies, learn different coping skills. I had leaned on alcohol as a crutch for 10 years. I think many, especially high performing men, it's like they go and they give their all at their work all day, and then they get home and they're just like, and using alcohol to kind of numb, just like, using it as a crutch essentially. But to be able to, trust yourself in a way to have other coping skills, to feel like you don't need to drink and you don't want to drink, that freedom is just incredible. So it transforms lives, and it's not about counting sober days or, again, labeling yourself an alcoholic. It's just fixing the brain, and that is true freedom.
Yeah, I love that. And that was going to be my next question, because you said, did I hear you right? You said that it has an 80% success rate?
Yeah.
Okay. That's massive. So if it has an 80% success rate, you said you had some thoughts, because my question was, how in the wide world is this not like what everyone is talking about? Right? What are your thoughts around it? Why? Because to me, everybody should know about this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's why I've been like screaming it from the rooftops since 2017, and why I started, it was hard to go public with my story initially, because I was like, I don't want people to know I have this problem, but I just felt very compelled, because I was like, people need to know this exists. And if you look at data from like traditional treatments, it has an 80% failure rate. So it's like wild that this has a success rate of 80%. Some reasons, and I work in this field, I talk to experts who've been at it a lot longer than me and kind of pick their brains as to why they think it's not, more well known. One of them is that Naltrexone, the medicine that's used in this treatment, is generic. And so it's been around for decades. It's kind of old news. So like I've gone to addiction conferences and they're like, yeah, we know about Naltrexone. Like they just don't really care about it. They want the next shiny object, basically. And since it's a generic pill, it's really cheap. There's no pharmaceutical company out there like marketing it to make a bunch of money off of it. And so there's no money in it to push it out there. Also, the treatment system as it is, it's been set up in this way for nearly 100 years, is strictly abstinence based. And so kind of the formula is you go into rehab, you go into detox, you stay for 30 days, and then you go to meetings every day for, the rest of your life. Or, a lot of people do it for years or a long, long time. And so it's not set up to be kind of a drink reduction type of treatment. And, you know, the sad truth is that the treatment industry is like a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if it has an 80% failure rate, they're counting on repeat customers. So that's a couple of reasons. It's interesting because there's been some news reports recently where everyone knows about Ozempic now, right? For weight loss. And they're like, the headlines have been like, the Ozempic for alcohol. So they're kind of, it's starting to get more known. And was articles in like New York Times, and, you know, it happens, but it just hasn't gained traction. And the final thing I'll say is, like, technically any doctor can prescribe this medication. But when I learned about it, I had to go to 5 doctors and none of them would prescribe it. It was like so infuriating because a lot of general doctors just don't know about medications. And there was actually a paper that came out recently, and it said that only 2% to 4% of people who would benefit from this medication are actually prescribed it or offered it. So there's this huge lack of awareness about the fact that a medication can even be used. And a lot of general doctors simply will refuse it because they don't have training in addiction medicine. And so they don't feel comfortable prescribing it, even though it's not an addictive medicine. It's pretty benign. It's getting easier to get the prescription now. But those are some of the reasons why it's not more well known. And it's one of the original researchers, Dr. Volpicelli. He's actually the medical advisor in my program. And he's literally been like talking about this medicine for 40 years. And he was kind of seen as a quack when he was researching it originally, to suggest that alcohol addiction, you know, lives in this certain reward center in the brain and this medicine can reverse it. Like, people were just like, what? Like, no, but it's true. And there's tons of studies. People can look online. There's studies.
So there ain't very much money in it, is what I'm hearing you say. Right.
There's no money. It's generic.
Yeah. So, which is part of the reason why there's not a big agenda to push it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Sadly.
You're right. That is sad. Well, hey, we're doing our part. Our part. Can I say thank you for doing your part in this journey as well, and telling other people about it. I think that's noble and admirable, you know, for sure. Mm-hmm. Couple quick questions before you wrap it up here. But what are some men believe lies all the time. All of my clients I'm coaching them because they're believing lies about themselves, about the father they are, about the husband they are. And so at the end of the day, it's really just my job as a coach to reveal the truth to them and help them reconcile that. Right. So, you know, in your experience, what are some lies that men believe that really kind of keep them stuck in these unhealthy patterns of drinking?
Yeah, I mean, kind of one that's coming to mind is the belief of once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You know, that's kind of beat into people, and people get mad at me because I don't call myself an alcoholic. Like, I just feel like I'm recovered. It was the thing of my past. I don't struggle with it anymore. And so that belief that if they're currently struggling with their alcohol, that's just who they are, like having to put on that identity as an alcoholic, that is absolutely not true. Again, if you understand the 101 of the neuroscience of alcohol addiction and how it can be unlearned. So that's certainly one of them. And also, you know, just the belief that they're stuck with how they are. You know, alcohol, when we drink a lot, especially for decades, it does a number on our confidence. Again, you know, maybe we're not even aware of it. And so recognizing if someone's drinking a lot and they just feel like a failure and like that's who they are and that's who they'll always be, to recognize that so much can change when you fix your brain. And that can be done in a lot of different ways. I'm sure you work with your clients in a lot of different mindset techniques or ways to change their thinking. But especially with, you know, if alcohol is something they struggle with, understanding that the brain isn't stuck that way. And when you can even, the thing I hear from people a lot is just they have hope through this treatment. Even in the early days of it, they can have this glimmer of hope because they see themselves thinking about alcohol a little bit less or drinking a little bit less. So understanding that the brain can change in a very real way. And just because something has been a problem for years or decades, it doesn't have to stay that way. Yeah, like there's so much untapped potential within people. And I just think as we drink a lot, it progressively kind of steals that from us. We forget about the things we wanted to do, maybe dreams we had from years ago, or the type of person we wanted to be. And that can all be rediscovered. And it's just amazing what it does, again, when the brain feels more free and it's not thinking about drinking anymore. And it's just a non-issue for people. So yeah, the brain is a powerful tool. And, if someone's struggling with your drinking, and even if that's been in your family line and everyone's doing around you, like, you're not stuck. And it's, if you've tried other approaches like I did, like moderation or quitting, and it's been really hard and you failed at it, or maybe you can't imagine life without drinking, that's where this treatment can be super powerful, because you don't have to quit. You can just help fix your brain. And like you said in the intro, I don't drink anymore simply because I don't want to drink. And so people have the option to choose like what they want for themselves. And it's a real place of freedom to just effortlessly choose not to drink.
Hey, brother, can we take a quick break from this episode? Because I want to tell you about something I'm so excited about. Because maybe you're listening to this episode and you've been crushing it at work, but let me ask you, at what cost? Because behind the leadership title and the accolades, maybe your marriage is tense. Maybe you've been snapping at your kids, or you packed on some extra weight, and secretly you're exhausted. Deep down, it could be so much better. And I know what that's like, because that was me. You see, 10 years ago, I was in a big job with big goals, and everything looked great on the outside. But on the inside, my marriage was on life support. I was 50 pounds overweight and drowning in debt, stress, and shame. So I went all in, and I transformed my life. I spent the next decade studying everything I could about marriage, about fitness, about psychology, and about emotional mastery. And now I've distilled all of it, everything that I've learned and everything that I teach my private one-to-one clients, into my flagship trilogy called The High Performance Husband. Listen, this isn't just another course. It's a battle-tested framework to help you rebuild your body, reignite your marriage, and rewire your mindset without sacrificing your edge or your ambition. You guys, this has been 5 years in the making, and now I'm ready to give it to you. So if you're ready to be desired and respected by your wife again, to walk into a room with unshakable confidence, to keep your cool and master your emotions, or to lead your home with strength and presence, not burnout and guilt, then this is your moment. I want you to go to dadnationco.com/HPH, or just hit the link in the show notes below. Grab your copy today and become the man, the husband, and father you were called to be. All right, now let's get back into it. Yeah. Before we jumped on the call, you had said that this Sinclair method, I can't remember if you said specifically the Sinclair method, but these concepts kind of apply to other kinds of addictions as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the Sinclair Method protocol, taking naltrexone before drinking, this type of protocol, the medication naltrexone taken before engaging in a behavior, can be used for other addictions. And there's been research into it for marijuana, for gambling, for porn. I actually have a story on my YouTube of a gentleman who used it for alcohol, but his compulsive sex disorder also went away. And so a lot of the binge eating is another one. A lot of these behaviors that are kind of compulsive and pleasurable, by following this protocol, naltrexone kind of blunts the reward from them, and the brain can gradually unlearn them as a compulsive behavior. So for people to look into it, there's research into it. Naltrexone is getting easier to get. Like if people, I can help people, point them in the right direction or whatever. But if they're struggling with any of those other addictions, it has potential to help those as well.
Wow. That's amazing. And I think that's a great segue because, I always like to give guys next steps. The whole point of this show is to give them practical steps and what they can do if they need help. And so if there's a man who's listening to this, show today, and maybe he's suspicious that, or maybe he knows that he's drinking too much, or maybe he has some other addictions that he believes that could be beneficial using this method. Maybe he doesn't know where to start. What's one brave step he could take today?
Yeah, realize that it's possible to become empowered over alcohol. Like, something that AA kind of teaches us and again, this helps some people, so I don't knock it, but that we're powerless over alcohol. And that never sat well with me, because I was like, how am I powerless over this liquid substance? Like, that just doesn't make sense. And when we heal the brain, we can truly become empowered over it. So a first step would be just recognize there are alternatives, and to start doing your research. I mean, I've got over 1,000 videos on YouTube, tons of success stories. Those are super inspiring for people just to hear firsthand, a lot with men on my channel as well, who have gone through this. They can come to my website, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. I have lots of free resources. They can reach out, ask questions, understand just that there are options and you're not stuck where you are. Yeah.
I love that. A little quick question for you as we wrap it up, because obviously you have a powerful story with alcohol, but how has your own personal story really kind of shaped the way that you help others overcome alcohol? And maybe what's the most surprising thing that sobriety has taught you about life, about your identity, about love, all those things?
Yeah. I think one of the things, when I started making videos in 2017, I was just like putting them out there. I didn't expect really anyone to see them. And I was blown away to hear from people from around the world who could relate to what I was articulating with my issues with alcohol. And for so long, I felt so alone and in so much shame around my drinking, because I was hiding it from my husband. I was isolating more, drinking home alone, alcohol was taking over my life more and more. And I kind of felt like I was the only one going through that or who understood that. And so being able to connect with other people from around the world, from all walks of life. In fact, I work with people over the years, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, therapists, teachers, police officers, it does not discriminate. And in fact, I think people that are high achieving and success oriented maybe can fall into this more, especially if they're at business meetings and it's normalized, or they have a high pressure job and this is their relief when they get home. So recognizing that just because you may be struggling with alcohol, it's not your identity. It's not who you are. It's simply that your brain has changed and it can change back. That is something that has really been a blessing to me, just to see how common and normal this issue is. It's not like this big, scary, stigmatized thing like we're led to believe. In fact, the CDC recently said that 1 in 3 Americans drink excessively. So tons of people are drinking too much. And again, it's not this lifelong disease or condition. You're not an alcoholic. Your brain has changed and you can, reverse it back. And 99.9% of the people I work with are incredibly smart, wonderful, loving people, and they just have this issue. And the good news is it's reversible. And so I feel really fortunate to do work that's super meaningful to me, and it's, changing lives. And like I said, I got a business degree I never expected, but kind of fell into this work, and it's been a huge blessing.
Wow. Well, an 80% success rate, you can't knock that. In the world of, addiction and, this is kind of what we're talking about. That's absolutely incredible. Right. Yeah. So, awesome. Well, Katie, last question for you. Where can we find you and how can we support you?
Yeah, thank you. My website is thrivealcoholrecovery.com. My socials are all that as well. I'm always putting out videos and success stories, and I have a podcast. And so, just following along, or you can do your research there or reach out. I would love to connect with people if I can be a source of support or a resource.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Katie, so much for being on the show today. I know that there are men who will have needed to hear what you have shared with us today. And so I appreciate your time, and I appreciate and I'm inspired by your mission. And I just want to wish you the best as you move forward, and that you would reach more and more people, because this is a powerful message that more people need to hear.
Yeah, I'm so thankful you had me on. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk soon, Katie.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Dad Nation podcast today. Listen, if today's conversation challenged you, if it encouraged you or helped you level up in any area of your life, would you do me a favor? Take 60 seconds to rate and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. This helps us reach more men who need to hear this message. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Dad Nation YouTube channel, where you're going to find full episodes, clips, and exclusive content designed to help you win at home just like you do at work. Remember, your family does not need perfection. They need your presence. Your leadership matters. So keep showing up, keep leveling up, and never forget, when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. We'll see you next time.